Welcome friends, welcome back to the kitchen, welcome back to Sunday morning and the old cookbook show. Today we're going to do a recipe out of this cookbook, published in 1935 from the Kalamazoo Gazette in Michigan. And these are prize-winning recipes and other selected recipes that people have submitted to the newspaper for their weekly recipe column. The newspaper gathered all of these up, gave prizes to some, and put all of them into this cookbook. And so it is a real community cookbook. And it has multiple recipes for the same thing. You go in there and there's 3 or 4 recipes for hermits, there's 3 or 4 recipes for this, that, and the other thing that show variations from family to family of what they ate. But the recipe we're going to do today is called Southern Coffee Cake. And I've chosen this recipe knowing that it's going to stir a little bit of a commotion in the comment section from people who are from the American South. What is a recipe? What do the people of Michigan know about Southern recipes? Blah, 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 blah. But I don't believe that it's called Southern Coffee Cake because it has anything to do with the South. I believe it's called Southern Coffee Cake because it contains sorghum molasses or sorghum syrup, which is this stuff right here, which is the second reason I'm making this, because I love sorghum syrup. I think it brings in a really interesting flavor to a lot of things. Another reason I wanted to make it is that it's a coffee cake. And in the North American tradition of coffee cakes, coffee isn't an ingredient. Although here it is an ingredient. In the North American tradition, coffee cakes are generally a heavy spice cake that is eaten with coffee, or at a coffee gathering, or when your friends come over from coffee, or at coffee break, that sort of thing. It's something that you ate with coffee. Kind of like the English tradition of a tea cake. No tea in a tea cake. You had that cake at tea time. Mid-afternoon tea time, not the Northern English dinner tea time. English is so tough. Okay, so the butter is in the mixer, and to that I'm going to add some white sugar. So while the butter and sugar creams together, we'll deal with our dry ingredients. So I have some flour here, and to that I'm going to add cloves, cinnamon, salt, baking soda, and I'm going to grate in some nutmeg. Okay, that's enough nutmeg. Just give that a little bit of a stir. You don't have to stir it too much, just kind of get it brought together. And now we are going to add an egg to our mixer. Now we need to add in a cup of sorghum syrup or sorghum molasses, and I'm just going to free pour. And if you don't have access to sorghum syrup, sorghum molasses, regular molasses is going to work. Corn syrup is going to work. Treacle is going to work. They're not all going to have the same flavor profile. They're not all going to have the exact same consistency or sweetness, but they're all going to be really close. And they're all going to work. And they're all going to be just as messy. Next in is the coffee. Now the recipe tells me to mix in the coffee all at once in this step. I would have expected, just based on pretty much every other cake recipe I've ever come across, that you would alternate between the liquid, in this case coffee, most of the time it's milk or buttermilk, and the flour, do alternating additions. In this case it just said to put the coffee in, which breaks the batter. Batter does not look good at this point, but I'm sure it will all come back together. So I'm going to spoon in the flour and spice mixture, and we'll see how this goes. Okay, so the cake dough came together pretty nicely. That's the last of the flour. Last 2 ingredients are raisins, and it calls for nutmeats. Presumably any nutmeats that you like. This is the Great Depression. So whatever ones you could probably get your hands on, whatever ones you could afford, that sort of thing. Now, it doesn't tell me what size of a cake pan to use, so I've got a 9x9 here greased with a parchment sling. And we're going to get the cake batter in there. And the book does give me a temperature, 350 degrees Fahrenheit, but it doesn't give me a time. So I'll get this cake into the oven, watch it carefully, and we'll see what happens.
Glen, you've got some cake.
I do have some cake. I do have some cake. Okay, so I'm going to cut that piece in half because I don't think we need a giant piece of cake.
I probably don't need a giant piece of cake, but you know, I'm all into cake.
So this is called, what is it called? Southern Coffee Cake. I don't believe it has anything to do with this. It's from Kalamazoo.
Oh, I see it's got sorghum. Does it have sorghum?
I think that's the only thing that relates it to the South. It's from Kalamazoo, Michigan.
Okay.
So I think the only, I think it's Southern because it uses sorghum syrup, and sorghum syrup is thought of as a...
And it's meant to be eaten with your coffee versus containing coffee.
No, it contains coffee.
Oh, does it?
Yeah.
I didn't get that far in the recipe. Oh, there you go. It's written too small for me. I mean, it looks tasty.
It is tasty. The coffee's lost. I don't taste the coffee at all. What I taste is the cinnamon and the cloves and the nutmeg.
Oh, not bad. Not bad cake. It would go well. It goes well with it's exactly that coffee cake kind of flavor, right? It's not. It's meant to go with that strong flavor of coffee. In my case, tea. But
it's sturdy. Like it's of that style of cake. That's a pretty good cake. Sorghum's lost in it too, though. The sorghum's completely lost in it. You don't get the sorghum flavor, which goes back to what I said earlier. If you don't have sorghum, you can use molasses, corn syrup, treacle, golden syrup. Any of those other sort of liquids would work.
I mean, clearly I'm not terribly offended by it because it's gone.
So give this one a try.
Thanks for stopping by. See you again soon.